My name is Henry, and I'm a compulsive gambler. Sorry, am I at the wrong meeting? I thought this was the Anonymous Gamblers Conference. Apparently not. I'd just like to thank Kerry for asking me to present today. I presented a number of times to the ASA, and she saw me do a bit of a show there recently and asked me if I'd like to come along and have my brain picked about gold stocks. Now, I have a second confession to make as well. I'm not very good with gold stocks. I have lost lots of money with gold stocks. I've also made lots of money with gold stocks, but I'm certainly no expert. I am not a geologist. I am probably an enthusiastic amateur. But I find the great thing about Kerry's conferences, and mixing with such wonderful people as well, is the hope and optimism. When you listen to miners talking about drilling down 1,000 meters to find 2 or 3 grams of gold in a ton of dirt, that is optimism to the nth, isn't it? I mean, come on. And the one thing that's always puzzled me, of course, is that we spend an inordinate amount of money finding this gold. We then dig it up. We then melt it down into a little bar, and then we bury that little bar in a vault underground, which kind of seems a little weird. So I am a bit of a fraud, and in the true way that politicians deflect and say, I'm glad you asked me that question, and then they will go on to ask or answer about anything else, I decided that I think Gold Nerds came up with 250 gold stocks that are listed on the ASX. I did have a bit of a presentation. I thought there's no way in the world that I'm going to be able to answer all the weird gold questions from experts like yourselves. So I decided to have a bit of a cop-out for a start. I also nicked Jess Amir's beautiful chart that she put on Twitter this morning. Sorry, Jess, thank you. But it was a goodie. But everyone else has used far better charts. Barry, love your work, mate. But I just thought I'd put in a few charts of gold just to sort of set the scene. And also, bearing in mind that most people, or most commentators, and I'm one of those dreaded commentators, I guess, because some of you may have seen me on Ausbiz or various other things, we'll talk about, you should have 5% of your portfolio in gold. So I thought out of the 15 minutes, I'd spend 5% talking about gold, and the other 95% talking about what you want to talk about, which is other things maybe apart from gold. Northern Star, the big daddy of them all at the moment, I guess, apart from Newmont. It's been doing very well, but it has been, as an enthusiastic amateur in the gold sector, it has been bloody disappointing, to be honest. There hasn't been the frenzy. The frenzy in lithium back in November 2022 was just ridiculous. And of course, that hasn't ended particularly well. But the frenzy in gold has really, I think I'm with Barry, I don't think it's even started yet. We're just seeing the leaders take off. So with the 5% that I was going to talk about in gold, I thought, I know what I'll do. I will talk to my friend Richard Morrow, who's the chairman of the Melbourne Mining Club. Lovely bloke, I've known him for years. He is an expert. And he will give me some stocks that I should buy. And he did. One of them is out there in the foyer, Spartan Resources, looking pretty good. It has been a bit of a standout this year as far as small gold stocks go. One thing I would say, and this is not aimed at Spartan Resources, this is just generally, this is more aimed at technical analysis actually, which I'm not a massive fan of. Sometimes the technical guys forget that they're real companies and they have a real valuation, and they don't look at that, they just look at, oh, this is a lovely chart, it's got right head and shoulders, it's got a reverse back panel with a double dip. Remember, they're real companies, they have a market cap. Drone Shield got to a $2 billion market cap. I mean, come on, it was $2.70. It was ridiculous. Look at the chart, looked great though. So just remember, look at the market valuation. This is another one that Richard put me onto, Saturn Metals. A little bit of a sleeper there perhaps, Apollo Hill is their project. Astral Resources, again, another one that Richard put me onto. They're pregnant with a MRE as well. So, I've done my 5%. And most of you, I'm sure, in this room have got other questions about other stocks. I've got 9 minutes and a bit to go. So if you'd like to ask any questions, more than happy to try and bat them back, try and answer them if I can. I do a thing for Marcus Today, which is the newsletter I write for on a Friday night sometimes, called Ask the Analyst, where basically people can ask me questions straight out of the bat. It's a lot easier there when I have charts in front of me and I have a little bit of backstory that I can rely on. So this is a bit like, I guess, thank God you're here. When you just come into a room and it just, I don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, has anybody got any questions about the market, about the themes, about sectors, about anything? Yes?
What's going to happen to US bond yields over the next 12 months?
Well, I think we all know that the US interest rates are going down, don't we? I mean, I think they're going to go down a lot slower than the market would like them to go down. I think the Fed is going to be cautious. It has been pretty cautious up till now. And there's the small matter, of course, about the US election, which is going to throw a little bit of a spanner in the works. And I watched during that horrible crisis back in August. Who remembers that? Those wonderful days, August the 5th, I think it was that Monday. It's very reminiscent. I lived through the 87 crash. I've been through a few other crashes since. It was very reminiscent of that, sort of the free fall, the spiraling, and some of the ridiculous commentary that came out. Jeremy Siegel, who's a very respected economics professor in the US, suggested that the Fed should immediately cut 50 basis points as an emergency move on the back of one data point, the jobs number that came out, and freaks everybody out. It's just twaddle. I think the Fed is going to be very cautious. I don't think they want to spook the horses. I think the path up was relatively, well, the last 6 months or so has been quite gradual, and I think we're going to spend a little while getting back down to what they consider is neutral. I'm not sure what neutral is.
What about the US budget deficit going to $1 trillion every
It's quite big, isn't it? They're now spending more on interest payments for servicing the budget deficit than they are on defence. It's quite staggering, but as Barry says, what are you going to do? The US dollar is king. What's the alternative? You know, I was back in the UK recently. That ain't the alternative. Nor is the euro the alternative. The yuan, maybe the Swiss franc. No, you know, as long as the world is willing to finance the US, I think it will be relatively okay. And if they do get interest rates down, which they should do, of course, that will relieve some of the pressure on that debt. The problem is of what happens if Mr. Trump gets in or whether Mrs. Harris gets in, what happens to that deficit then? Because they're both probably going to spend in different ways. So which is good for our old friend that we're all here for, Gamblers Anonymous. Yes, Sean. How are you, mate? I haven't seen you for years. Well,
Marcus Padley, obviously been around for a long time. To succeed in markets today, as long as you had, clearly you're a quality product. So what do your subscriber numbers tell you at the moment about general sentiment and equity? Do you see a kind of rise and fall of subscribers as market euphoria comes up and down? Is there anything that your subscriber numbers can kind of tell us about what investors feel more generally?
yes, I can actually, Sean. Thank you for the question. He's not a paid advertising. When COVID hit, our subscriber numbers doubled. And when trouble hits, usually people want you to hold their hand. Because to be honest, in a bull market, everyone's a genius, aren't they? Even I'm a genius. In a bull market, everyone makes money. So there's no problems. It's when trouble hits that you see a rise in interest in people to hold their hands, give them advice perhaps, and maybe to blame someone when it all goes to custard again. So our subscriber numbers since COVID have been relatively stable, which belies the fact that we do have, shall we say, an older cohort of people, and we do have natural attrition as they drop off the perch. So they have stayed relatively stable. We are terrible. We are terrible at marketing, so it's not necessarily a reflection on the product, but we are terrible at marketing. I'll say that now. Yes, loved your chat.
Thank you. Henry, now that we've got Henry as a 10 million ounce gold deposit, which state, and I'm going to purposely will ask, which state rather than company do you think the next will see the next 10 million ounce gold deposit?
I'd like to say New South Wales and be patriotic. How about that?
They can have it, but can we develop it?
Ah, well, that is a different question, isn't it? But yes, I'd like to say New South Wales, but who knows? Any other questions? Yes, the gentleman over there. Lovely shirt.
Start from today.
Yeah.
High 143, finish today at 134. That's about 7%. Volatility is a problem for people who trade share flow like any good shares. Okay. BHP, $51 some month or so ago.
Yeah.
Down $40. Any comments on volatility and how it's going to affect Australia?
I think if you're playing in this space, if you're playing in gold miners or any kind of speculative asset, you have to accept volatility. When we talk about volatility, everybody gets upset about volatility when it's bad volatility, when it's negative. No one complains when it's volatile to the upside. No one complains about Levrotto in the antimony game, which has just gone ballistic on the back of suddenly the antimony story. I mean, who knew about antimony? Boyce did from Southern Cross, but we all complain about volatility when it's negative. We don't complain about it when it's positive. It's the price you pay to play the game. If you don't want to play, it's easy. You just put your money on a deposit account. But sometimes you have to use the volatility and embrace it and treat it as opportunity. Because at the end of the day, there's only 2 points in time that matter. The price or prices that you buy it at and the price that you sell it at. All the rest is either opportunity for you to be scared or to be greedy. But those are the only 2 points in time. Our biggest asset, let's face it, is our house, usually. If our house was valued day to day, we'd freak out. Oh, property prices are down 1%. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. I've just lost $500,000. You know, volatility is an opportunity. Those sorts of days we had in August, the beginning of August, which, you know, in hindsight, even in the maelstrom of it, I was trying to hold people's hands and say, you know what, this is just what happens. You know, you've got to accept it. That's part of the game. And you've got to use it. And you've got to have a plan. You know, if you're an active trader, you've got to have a bit of a plan. Even if you're a long-term investor, have a watch list of stocks that you like, quality stocks. And when that volatility comes in, we've just been through reporting season, it's like lotto. You know, you read a company report and you go, well, that looks pretty good. Dividends up, cash flow, everything's good, cash flow, great. Stock drops 20%. Because the CEO said challenging. You know, get out of thesaurus, mate. Say something else. So it's just the price you've got to pay. If you're an equity investor, whether it's gold, lithium, whatever it is, you just got to accept that volatility is part of the game and use it as part of the opportunity. And if you know, I was writing that if you're on the ship and it's waggling around all the waves and the storm's coming in, focus on the horizon, because otherwise you're going to get seasick. Focus out there on your long-term investment goals. I've got 46 seconds. One last question. Yes?
All commodities and Bitcoin are priced in US dollars. And for this question that is troubling me for the last 10 years, and I'll be asking, what happens when US dollar is no longer the reserve currency of the world?
When the US dollar is no longer the reserve currency of the world, well, this comes down to what Barry was saying. What other currency would possibly be the reserve currency of the world, apart from gold? I was intrigued by the guy from the bullion place that's buying his sausages with bits of silver. Shaving a bit here. That's fantastic. I had a mate in Bali that did that, which was a bit worrying. I can't see how it's going to change. You know, we're currently engaged in a Cold War 2.0, US versus China, technology, etc. And at the moment, the US is a country mile ahead and a country mile safer than what's happening in China, which is, you know, we saw it with Temu, PDD. That's an extraordinary fall for a company like that. It was it 28%, $55 billion worth of market cap, knocked out in a day because they had some disappointing sales. Extraordinary. Those are big companies. We got NVIDIA tonight. How much fun is that going to be? We're going to love that. So thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Kerry, for what's a wonderful event again. I did feel this was a smidge of a hospital pass talking about 250 gold stocks, which is why I kind of was told to do whatever you like, which is what I did. So thanks very much for having me.